Hey everybody, Dave here, and I'm going to walk you through generative AI in Power Apps with a custom connector that I created, and I want to take you step by step through the entire process, including apps, as well as using two methods of the app. And then we're going to show you how to put this into Power Automate too as well and consume it there as well. This is going to be a little bit of a long video. I'll try to segment it up. Probably take you for almost an hour during this ride, but I'll try and make it as quick as possible. So the first thing before you even get started that you're going to need to do is come over here to OpenAI. You're going to want to make sure to click under Products and then API Login. They make it so difficult to find anything in here. Anyway, we want to go into the API section. This will get us into the playground, but ultimately we want to come over here to your area, or rather to your profile. And there's a couple of things going on here. So this is where you get to create and manage projects. So right now I'm in Power Apps, and so this is the main project setting for me. And then within the project of here, I have my API keys. Here's the default organization. I can view project API keys. This is for the custom connector. In any event, I'm going to create a new key for this video. We're just going to call this demo. It's under the project key. We'll create a secret key, and let's keep this here. I'm going to copy it to the clipboard, but I'm not going to get rid of it just in case we need it again. I am also going to come over here because we want to get to the API documentation. So let's just click on API, or, well, again, they make everything so difficult. Here's documentation. Let's go here. Okay, so now that we're at documentation, this will get us where we need to be. Ultimately, I want to be here in this API reference. Now, it is important to know that when you're doing the authentication to Power Apps through a custom connector, the way you authenticate is with this syntax right here. So I'll circle back to that. All right, so with the OpenAI already ready to go, information ready to go, now we need to hop over here to my GitHub repo. You go to github.com/DT Soden. That's right here. And so you can see that also up here in the URL. Find the repo called YouTube videos. If you don't see it, you can come up here under repositories and find YouTube videos, and then you'll click into that. What you want to find is this folder right here called Chat Platform Custom Connectors. We'll click in through there. I do have a legacy one for Google, which is the old POM type thing, so you can ignore that. The one we're working with today is OpenAI. There is an Azure OpenAI variation of it, and AI and Azure has its own additional layers of Azure complexity on top of the OpenAI. And then the other thing too is that sometimes they're not always the latest and greatest. I have a personal preference of going to OpenAI if I can, and I would avoid Azure OpenAI unless I have issues of organizational security concerns and things of that nature, and they just want to keep it all within the tenant. But this is going directly out to OpenAI directly. So we'll click into there. I'm going to click on the logo or graphics so that we can quickly just go ahead and download this to our local machine. I'm going to click back out, and I'm going to click into the YAML, and now I'm going to copy all of this YAML here to the clipboard. So with all of that prerequisite work done, we're finally ready to create our custom connector, and we'll do this new custom connector, and we're going to create it from blank right here. I'm going to give it a name of OpenAI, and then just hit continue. And I'm going to upload this custom graphic so that I can bind that to there. I'm going to toggle off this Swagger editor that you see up here at the top. And I'm going to delete all of this Swagger code, and I'm going to paste in this code that I grabbed from my Git repo. Okay, the next thing that you're going to need to do is come over here to definition. And when you click on there, I want you to come down here to policy. And the reason for this is that if we go to each one of these methods, like we have to configure it out here. And that's all well, good, and fine, but the problem with configuring the key, API key here, is that everybody that uses this custom connector is going to have their own key, and we don't want the user to get prompted for that. So one of the ways, there's two actually, but one of the easy ways to configure this is with a policy. Very few people use policy in custom connectors. They know it's there, maybe they don't know it's there, and few actually ever use it, but there is a good way to use this for this use case, and I would highly encourage you to consider it as well. So I'll show you the benefit here in just a moment. Let's hop back over here because we want to grab this name authorization, because this is really key as far as what needs to be used in the name. So we're going to keep the name very consistent, and I'm going to do this as an HTTP header. The reason for that is if we come over here to the, hopefully you guys know JSON, and hopefully you guys have worked with APIs before. Otherwise, this is not going to make much sense, but just know that there is a header that needs to be passed along to the request. And so these custom connectors are talking directly to talking directly to OpenAI's API. And as a result of that, we need to provide header information in a very specific format. And so that's what we're doing here with this setting of the header. So the operations, we're going to include this header, and we're going to bind this policy to all of our actions. This is nice because this gives us a centralized place. So here's the takeaway of the benefit. We got one area to manage the headers that's going to be used for all of these. So as or if the API key were to ever change, you just go to one place to update everything. And because it's a policy, it's kind of secure. It doesn't normally come along for the ride unless you're putting it in a solution. So that's also another extra benefit too as well. The header name, we want to just leave it as authorization. Now this is very important because this is the one that's the takeaway. You could call this Foo Schnickens or whatever you want up here. That's just an internal name. But this is super important because this header name is exactly what it's being called out in the documentation, where we need to provide authorization, the keyword bearer, and then our OpenAPI key. So we're going to use this. I'm going to copy this keyword bearer over here because we want to keep it the same syntax that we had here. And so for some reason that didn't copy over. Let's do this again. Okay, so we've got bearer, and now I need this key. Okay, so I'm copying the key over, and now after bearer, I'm going to do a space, and I'm going to put my key here. Now this key is going to be deleted after this video, so it won't work if you tried to use it. And the other thing too, just wanted to go back to the documentation so you can see what's going on here. So authorization, that's the name, so that's the key. The value is going to be bearer and this key, which is why we have bearer and the key here and the key name. So here's your key, here's your value. The value needs to have that word bearer in there in addition to the key. Anyway, a lot of rambling to try to explain something that should be simple, but anyway, it can get tricky for folks. All right, so we want this to be on our request. When we request something from the API, we want to include this header override. And again, it is an override, so make sure you leave it as such. Other than that, everything is good. So we've got the key, we've got the YAML, so pretty straightforward and easy to configure here. With that being said, let's just create the connector now. And so this will go out and do its thing. Unfortunately, we'll need to create a connection next, but we can do this in one fell swoop with the test. While this is happening, I do want to go back to the API reference. I do want to give a call out to the models that's out here. Actually, let me go back to the documentation. That's a little easier to show you here. So I have a legacy model in here. So if I popped up in the ChatGPT 3.5, I want you to take notice here. One of the actions that I have is for this turbo instruct. The reason that I've included it is because some of you may have some legacy stuff that you want to bring over, and this is the only legacy model really that still is in effect. You should and absolutely should not use this if you're doing something new. This is probably going to get expired any day now, so it's good to help wrap your mind's eye around it because it's really, really simple to use. The chat is a little bit more complicated, but super flexible, and it still can be used the way that you're using it here. But this is what they refer to as the completions. And if you scroll into the documentation somewhere, it talks about legacy things, and one of them is this completions model, and it's kind of a dying breed. I don't know, I can't really find it right now. Anyway, so this should be done hopefully now. Okay, and it is. We'll come over here, we'll click on 6 for the test. Up here is where we're going to test the operation, but first we need to create a connector because we don't have one. So using the custom connector, we are going to now consume it by making a connection to it. Just simply click. Now, if I had in step 2 selected a API key, this is where I would have had to have provided this, and everybody wanting to use the custom connector would have to do it. So we don't have this here now because we did this policy, which is really great. Keeps it nice and secure behind the walls. Nobody gets to see it and use it. All right, so in any event, I've now created that, and I go back to my custom connections, click on edit, traverse my way back all the way, because unfortunately it kicks you out when you create this connection. And I can come down here to click on, what is it, turbo instruct, and I have a test here. And I can just go, what is your name? And we'll test the operation. We hope to get a 200 back, and we did. And now we can see that the information is here. Now notice the return information that we're getting back from the API. We need to get our text from this choices option and then this text option that's here. So that is the response from that. So now, with this being said, we've got the custom connection out of the way. It only took 11 minutes to lay down all of that. Now we're going to come over here, now that we know that this works, and we're going to create a new app from, we're going to start with a page design. You can also come up here, new, start with a page design. Either way, it's just easier to click this big honkin' button right here, and we'll do that. And now all I want to do is a blank canvas, which is right here. So we can start from literally absolutely nothing, showing you how to build this from the ground up. The beautiful part about this custom connector is you can use and leverage this in all of your applications as well as your flows. So let's skip this for now. Let's come over here to the data area and let's add some data. And under connections, we should find our OpenAI custom connector. We're going to add this now. Now all we need to do is build in a couple of things. We need a label. The label is going to be used to return the data that we get back from the API response. We'll display it here. Let's do a little formatting. Let's make it really stand out. Let's make the background yellow so it's obnoxious to see. And then let's, instead of it text being vertically aligned in the middle, let's align it to the top. Now over here under overflow, we want to make sure that there's more text that'll fit in a text box, that we get a scroll bar so that it's just not hidden off screen. So let's choose scroll. That way this will scroll out over here. We'll kind of move this around. Let's insert now a text input. So this will be area of text where somebody can type in a message. And we'll pop this over here like this. Let's also do some formatting. Let's make this a multi-line text box. So now it's top left aligned that way. And now let's add a button. So button will come down here. And now we'll just rename. I double clicked and hit send. So now we've renamed it there. We could also rename it here. Okay. In any event, let's go over to our tree view and let's look at this. So we have button 1. We've got this text input box as text input 1. Our label is label 1. And we're going to programmatically reference this right now. So let's consume the custom connector that we have. Now it's called OpenAI. So let's just use the keyword OpenAI. And now we have all of these actions that's available to it. The one we want to use is this turbo instruct item. And then we use a open parenthesis. Now, the way that the custom connector is made, you just have to select this model because it's the only one available to you, and then add the IntelliSense you can see here. It tells you the model, so we've already given it. The prompt is going to be this text input box, but we need to add a comma. All right, so now we have the prompt. And from the tree view, if you remembered, this is called text input 1. So let's add that. Literally, there it is right there. I'll hit enter. And then period to get to the text property of that. Let's go ahead and choose max tokens. The default is 500, and for this example, 500 is just fine. So we're only going to do some small tokenization or using it. If you're not familiar with tokens, tokens is the amount of information that you can use sending into the request. A token is basically like 3 words-ish, and I don't know how many characters. I think it's like 12 or 15 characters. That'll kind of give you a rough idea. When I say 500, just kind of multiply that times 3, and then usually, I don't know, 1,500 to 2,000 characters roughly is what that would translate out to. There's articles out on the internet. You can go check this to be more precise. And then the default for the temperature is 0.0 to 0.9 or just 1. So the lower you are to 0.0, it is going to be less creative. So if you're using it in context of something to where you don't want it to like hallucinate or come up with some really crazy stuff, you want to keep it as close to 0 as possible to be just literally empirical. This is great for data analysis or analyzing text or summarization where you don't want it to get too creative. If you're writing, say, a custom story or you're writing a blog, maybe you want to boost the creativity. So maybe 0.5 if you want to split the difference, that's fine. Anyway, we'll just go ahead and close this up. Now this is all well and good like this because I'm going to get the information that I need from the API, and it's going to come back. But the problem is, I want you to think of pitching and catching in baseball. If a pitcher pitches the ball and the catcher doesn't have a catcher's mitt to catch the ball, then the ball's going to hurt, or it'll just go past him and he won't be able to catch it. So what we need to do is create a catcher's mitt. We'll do that by capturing this off inside of a variable. And we'll use the set function here. We give it a name of, say, v for variable AI, and we'll just leave it as simple as that, so variable AI. And then what we want to do is paste back in what we just used previously, and then we want to use a closing parenthesis for that set function. So now what happens is, over here in the retrieval or the information window, we need to change, not the overflow, but we want to change the text that's in here from text to AI dot, and now we're getting all this weird information. So to figure out what's going on here, it would be very helpful to come over here to the API reference. Let's see what's going on. And let's look at the let's go back to the documentation because this is this funky thing here. Chat completions. This is going to give us, I'm looking for the response. Here we go. This is the response. Okay, so from here, well, all of this technically is an example of the chat complete AI response. So hopefully you understand JSON. Right now this is a record. This entire blob is a record because of the curly braces. When you see, I don't want to dig into JSON too much, but when you see these square brackets, that means that there's a table. Ultimately what we want to do is we want to get to this content, and it's buried in the choices and it's underneath messages. So the first thing I want you to notice, if you're not familiar, and again, I don't want to digress too deep, choices is its value. So if we think of JSON and key value, the key that we're looking for is choices. So over here, when I did AI dot, you can see that choices is here. Now, if you look here, the data type shows you that it's a table. Now, we're not going to, at least from this API, we're not going to get multiple rows in this table. We're typically only going to get a single row that's returned. And because of that, let's go ahead and copy this off to the clipboard. And by using the first function, we'll get the first row returned in this table. And so let's paste this back in again. Okay, so now we no longer are dealing with a table, we're dealing with a row within that table, and you notice the data type has changed from table to record. So now if we put our dot period in here, we'll start to get additional information, and our choices are finish reason, log probes, and text. So if we hop back over here, we can see that choices and chat completions. This is chat completions. I don't want chat completions. I just want completions. So we're seeing the wrong information here. Turbo. let me go back. I always have a hard time finding what I want to get to show you guys. Let's try depreciated. That might be a little bit better. No, not very helpful. It's the turbo instruct. So let's do turbo instruct. I'm trying to get to the API reference so I can show you the return, because this is really important. Okay, legacy completions. Here's what we want. Okay, so this is the response right here. And we did choices, same thing, see choices, and we have the table. And we're bringing back the first row. So now we see text, we see index, log, probes, and finish reasons. This is our text. This is what we want here, okay? So out of that IntelliSense helper, let me back this off and do it again. This is the text option that we want here. Let's do text again. All right. So now this should bring back our text that's in here. So the next thing that we need to do is figure out, okay, so we're going to get whatever's in the text box as a response. Let's test this out. Let's just say, tell me your name. And we'll hit send, and with any luck, we'll get some information, but there'll be a problem, and I'll show you how to solve this. Okay, so we did get the response, but notice this extra space that's all in here, okay? We can get rid of this by quite simply adding a trim function in front of this. And if you're wondering what I'm doing, I'm just highlighting everything, I'm copying it off to the clipboard, and then I'm pasting it right back in again. So this time I'm simply just trimming what I was using before to get the information out. And for some reason, it's still not happy. So let me just undo this a couple of times. TRIM. And I lost my first function. And I should just close that up twice. But why is this? It just doesn't like the trim. Okay. It sees it as a record. I have completely destroyed something. I'm going to try to go back and... Okay, so this is a record. I'm using my text. And I just want to trim the text. Why is this so cantankerous? Okay, I don't know. Anyway, hopefully you guys saw what I did wrong. I'll go back and look at the video. You know, sometimes you beat yourself in the head up 3 times. Either that or Power Apps was just doing what it does sometimes and gets finicky. In any event, Power Apps is a love-hate thing. At times you'll run into issues, or weird issues like that, and question your own sanity. So it happens to all of us. In any event, we now have this working properly the way that we would think that it would need to be. And so this is iteration or idea number 1 on how to get this to work, okay? So now let's go ahead and blow this all away. We don't need this anymore. I'm going to show you how to use the other option. All right, and then tell me your name. Let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of this. This is the default value for the text box. I don't want to have anything in there. I'm clicking on the send item. Again, we're on the onSelect property. Now we're going to do OpenAI, and this time we're going to do chat, okay? And now if we look at this, we've got chat and body, okay? So hold on to your seat. This is where things are going to get a little gnarly, especially if you're not an intermediate or advanced Power App developer. You're going to really need to start to use additional things. It's not terribly complicated, but it's definitely harder to understand if you have no basis of understanding. So I'll try to go as slow as I can. All right, so basically what this is saying here is we need to provide it a body. Okay, so to do this, we need to do some prep work. So a couple of things that we're going to need to do is we're going to need to provide this body. But I also know that if we type in JSON in this area, it's going to start kicking a fit because that body needs to be what's called a unstructured object or something like that. I'll know when we get an error. Anyway, let me just do this to take you down the progression of what most normal people would do and how to solve for the problem and what those errors look like. All right, so let's do this where it needs a body or expects a body. So I'm going to do open and close, okay? And I'm going to pop this down like this. I'm going to come over or back over to the documentation. I don't need the keys anymore, so we'll get out of here. I do need now the chat model, and here's the chat completion, as well as the response or the request. What I need is this request body, because we're already doing this in the connector, so I don't need any of this. But what I do need is not this single quote. I just need the curly braces all the way down to here. Okay, so this is my body. Come back over here to Power Apps. A couple of things going on, and this is the layer of hell that you're going to have. So if you go and try to put a body in, most of you would think, let me just do this like this, okay? So I put an open and closing parenthesis, as well as the inside of it, the brackets, and I just paste in my example sample code. Okay, you would think that this would work, but there is a whole bunch of issues going on here. If you hover over any one of these, you says, we expect an operator such as blah, 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 right? It doesn't know what's going on. And part of the problem is that inside of text, you can't have quotes, because the quote is what decides what is text and what is not text. So we have to go into this example that we scraped out of here, and we need to fix and or escape these quotes by adding another quote. So basically double quotes escapes. Now this is where this gets really mind-boggling for most, because it makes the syntax so much harder to understand. It gets you spun around because you don't know where the problems lie. But again, we're going to take this step by step. So let's solve this problem where essentially we need to go through all of this text, and wherever we see a quote, we need to escape it with another quote. So double quotes. Let's move through here. Okay, so anyway, this is absolutely insane to do it like this. So I'm going to show you a better way when you're faced with something like this. So we're going to do OpenAI.chat, and then we need the body, and we're going to do the quote. We'll do a hard return. I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to copy this out again. This time, I'm going to paste this in like this. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a Control F, which will bring up this dialog over here. And if I twirl the chevron open, I can find a quote and I can replace it with a double quote. And then I can go one by one. It's hard to see because the hover text isn't working. But basically, this little icon over here allows you to do the first occurrence of it and replace. And this one does like a Hail Mary, and it says, you can see it found 24 of these, and it's going to do all of them in one fell swoop. So I would suggest using the last icon. You'll get everything in one fell swoop, but I will caution you that now that everything's been escaped, you need to remove the double quotes from the top, because this will essentially break everything. Now you're still getting errors, so you might think that it's the same error, but it's not. This is what it's complaining about. It says expecting an untyped object value instead. So this actually is working. The problem is now that we have a new problem, and you wouldn't know that because the underlying text changed when you hover over it, but it's still just red, so you might think it's the same problem, but it's not. So how you deal with JSON in Power Apps, so here's the JSON function. So this is what you might think that you need. So let's look through, and I want you to come over here to do JSON. So if we type that, we have JSON and parse JSON, okay? So if you typed in JSON, more than likely you'll just land here. It's super important for you though to read, and the description is the first indication or clue as to what this thing's doing. So this JSON function returns JavaScript object notation, which is what the acronym JSON is. It's a representation of a data structure so that it is suitable for storing or transmitting across the network. And you may get hung up thinking that's exactly what I need. I need to formulate and send out JSON. Problem is, yes, it is JSON, but if you look at the error message, it's expecting an untyped object value instead. This is a Power Apps thing, okay? So we're not dealing with normal programmatic language. So if you're coming from another programming language, this will frustrate you to no end. So this isn't going to work. Typically, how you should use this is, let's just say you had an in-memory data collection, and that in-memory data collection, you needed to JSONify that into JSON. It's really, really good at doing that. And if we come down here to the syntax and the examples, you can see how they're using it. First, they're creating a collection called city populations, right? And then after they got this, it's showing you what the data structure looks like. And now it's showing this in another different way. But anyway, we get down here and we see the first usage of it. It is JSONifying this table to basically make it JSON, right? And so here it's giving you the JSON equivalent example of that. But the takeaway is JSON for this purpose is not the right function that we need. What we want to look at is this other JSON option, which is parsing JSON, because we are already providing a JSON. If we look at this description, it says the parse JSON function will parse valid JSON, and it will return this string as an untyped object. This is exactly what we want, guys, right? We have valid JSON, and we know that it's valid because, well, we did all of the work to make it valid. And we also had to add, because Power Apps is in PowerFX using the syntax of PowerFX, this double quote is annoying, and it needs to just be this way because that's how PowerFX is. All right, so just to clarify everything, I'm going to take the first quote to the last quote. I'm going to delete it all. So inside of here, we've got nothing, but it's still on the clipboard. So if I do parse JSON and then open close parentheses, and then I put valid JSON inside of it, now all of a sudden, all of the errors go away. Now you see these highlighting, that's coming over here from this find thing again. Let's just get rid of it. And now, lo and behold, we have a good, properly formatted string. Now, there's one more challenge to solve here. And you might have noticed that well, let me explain what's going on here. And it's probably better to go over here first to explain it. So the way the chat works, if you've ever used ChatGPT, right? So it has multiple turns. I ask a question, it gives an answer. I ask a question, it gives an answer. So this creates a chat history or a log. You can put this in a collection and continue the conversation, but initially you need to provide the very first request on a new conversation. You need to provide it a system prompt. So the role is either system or user, okay? System or user. And in this case, system is going to be telling it what it's going to be doing. Okay, it's just a helpful assistant, and you're going to now ask the question as a user. Okay, and then your content in this case is hello. So this hello, we actually want to get rid of it, and we want to have whatever's in this text box. So we're going to use this text input 1. I want to caution you, big time, that we want to replace hello with what it is that we're going to go ahead and use. And you may be inclined to just say, oh, we just need to simply concatenate. So we'll do, another quote, right? And then do at, and then put in what we're looking at, which is our text input 1.text. And if you were thinking that, then you are absolutely correct. Some of you, though, may have gotten spun around and overthought this way too much and said, oh, well, this and this is the string literal for hello. I'm going to delete this string literal, so I don't need these quotes. And then that'll automatically get me into an area where I can concatenate. And then I'll do the text input 1 dot whatever. So if your brain is thinking in this regards, then you have a problem. because this is going to error out because this is invalid JSON. When you use JSON, let me go back over to the example. The information that you're sending has to be contained in quotes, okay? And this is where you probably got really spun up in your head. And the problem is I'm basically providing this information like this. Let me go ahead and grab this all again here. And it's going to give us an error, but you know what? Let me put this in Notepad. So if this is all valid, right? The way that the code is, it's going to be like this. And that's not valid JSON. We need to include these quotes in the example. And so this is the problem. Even though Power Apps says, hey man, life's good, bro. I can continue to do this all day long. No. This is going to error out because we need those quotes. Well, if I need a literal quote, remember I've got to escape a quote with a quote, and that's where we need to add back in that quote. So this is why it gets confusing, because you actually need 3 quotes, 1 to end the string, and then 2 quotes to provide the string literal. So the way you really should look at it is like this. This is inside the string, right? And it's because it's inside the string and I'm double quoting, it will leave 1 quote behind. And then this quote right here is breaking the string so we can use dynamic text. So if you think about it in terms like this in your brain, hopefully this will help wrap your head around it. That's why this is just so gnarly and nasty to get this right in the first place. So now with this being said and done, I should be able to interact with this and say, tell me a short, actually tell me a joke. That's going to be much better. So tell me a joke. Let's see what we get. Blah, blah, blah. Now you should expect an error. We're not really seeing an error, so something funky is going on here, right? And what's going on? Oh, well, I don't know if you caught this or not, but we're just calling everything and we don't have our catchers met. So maybe we need to put this in a catchers met. Set, let's do, what did we call that? VAI again, right? And now we're going to do this like this. Okay, this is all good and well and good. And remember, we have nothing over here. So we're going to do that VAI again, dot. Now we got a whole bunch of new stuff going on. So once again, let's check the documentation. Here's our response. How do we deal with this? So the first thing I need is, let's see, assistant. Assistant is there. This is a good time to bring this up. If you're going to do a round trip, create a ChatGPT-like experience, I want to bring this up again because now this is a good segue into this. You see we have system here, then we have user, and now in the response we have a new role. All of these are roles. Role is system. Role in this case is user. Role here is assistant. You will only have a system role one time. This is when you're starting a new conversation. You set the tone, the tempo, and the pace. It's basically, think of it like a pre-prompt or your prompt to get the conversation going. It tells the AI who it is and what its purpose in life is there. And then as you complete your turns, you're going to have a user and an assistant. A user and an assistant. Okay, so this is how this is going to go down and down again. So what we're trying to do is capture the response from the assistant, which is really here in this content, right? How can I assist you today? And because this is what it said you're a helpful assistant, and it just said hello, and it responded, hello, how are you today? How can I assist you, or something like that. Anyway, what we want to do is go down to choices again, but notice choices has this bracket. Now in this use case, you could potentially get other things that's in here, but inside of this table is a record. And this is the first item in this record. So that trick that we did with first, we need to do that here one more time. And so we're going to do AI dot choices, because that's our table. We can see the data choices table. We use that first trick again. And let's pop this in. no whammies, dot, what was it again? I think it's message, dot, well, we don't need to roll, but we want the content. Okay, so if you wanted to know how I figured that out, we did it like this. Choices, which is the first choice, messages, content. Okay, so if we come back over here and look at this again, choices is inside because it's the table, and now we've got a record with first. So inside of that record, I wanted to drill down to messages and content. So now this should provide me what I'm looking for, and we're catching the variable off here. So let's play this one more time. And we got some dancing ants. And it says, sure, here's a joke for you. Why don't scientists trust atoms? Because they make up everything. So if you understand science and atoms, that is kind of funny. So in any event, we don't have to do the trim here. So that seems good. It doesn't have all that trailing space. But it's good to visualize. Sorry about my phone blowing up on me here. It's just going absolutely nuts. All right, so if you run into the problem where you get unwanted spaces, and I always do this anyway as a good measure, just in case it comes up, it doesn't hurt to do it. But now, if it ever does happen, I don't have to worry about those extra trailing spaces or leading spaces because that's what trim does. And so one of the things that I could do here is, you know, instead of doing this all like this, even though this is functional, I could have put all of this information inside of a variable. So maybe I would do something like this. And here, because I'm on the screen, I'm not going to use this anywhere else. I would do update context. And the way you use update context is you need to provide it a record of key value. So in this case, I'm going to do body. And the body is the key. And now for this, I need to provide all of that information that's inside of there. And so I can do that like this, but the problem with this is going to be is that if I use the parse JSON function inside of it, it's going to have a problem because it's not going to run. It's going to see this as text. So I need to remove parse JSON from here, and then I'll need to remove it off of the backside as well. And then from here, I can do parse JSON and then pass in my body variable, which for some reason IntelliSense is not liking me right now. All right. BOD, there's my body. And we'll close that. We'll close the chat. We'll close the set. We'll add a final piece there. Now, all things being equal, we now have this broken out a little bit. So if I had to ever update the body, this is all self-contained into its own area. And now I can simply just pass in the body from up here. And if any time I need to make a change to the body, I can just update this body variable. So that sets up something interesting wherein you can use app on start, or you could use the now functions piece of it. Just different ways of thinking about this to make it a little bit more manageable or global, or, you know, anyway, I just wanted to let you know that you can break this stuff up like this. This is, again, probably maybe a little more advanced, but nonetheless, hopefully good stuff. Okay, so that being said, we've seen all of this work. Let's just test this broken out concept to make sure that it's still running. Tell me, whoa, I hit Alt and I did something bad. What did I do? Oh, I lost everything. Shoot. All right, well, I didn't get a chance to test it because I clicked a bunch of wrong stuff, but trust me, it would have worked. Okay, so that being said, let's just quickly jump over because I'm 43 minutes into this dang video already and I want to have you see how this works. I'm going to do an instant Cloudflow. I'm going to manually trigger it. I'm going to do a new step. I'm in the Legacy Designer. And so with the Legacy Designer, if I click on Custom, I can now use my own custom item. So if we did the, what was it, Turbo Instruct model, I now can put my prompt, tell me a joke, 500 tokens, all of this is default, it comes back, I can do a new step, compose. Let's do this compose, and let's use the output from the item, which should be text in this case. And it sees this now as for each loop, which is fine. You can leave it like this, but you could also change the compose to grab this information here like this, right? And so if we got rid of all this code and we just paste this in here, one of the things that you could do, as opposed to apply to each, would be, actually I don't want to use this one here, I'm trying to show this to you. Let's use this one right here. This is what we want. We're going to copy this off to the clipboard. So what we want is the outputs of this right here. So this is the key part. And let's just delete this. Let's move the compose out of the for each. Delete. And this time let's do an expression. So for the expression, we can do this output. But what I want to do is I want to do the first of the choices, and what I want is the text out of this. So now I have to do a question mark, set of brackets, and then I believe it's just text. Okay, so that should work there. Let's do save, and then we'll test it out. And if you're questioning again, how did I know all of that? Again, because I'm just familiar with this API as it is, just remember that under the legacy completions, after choices, the value is text. And so that's how I knew to just drill in one level. If I were to use the completions and do this, I would need to dig into the appropriate level of items, which down here is going to be choices, messages, and content. So let's go back over to flow. Run our flow. Done. And it errored out. What does it not like? Unable to process, compose input 01 expression, blah, 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 cannot evaluate, cannot text in array, please see whatever. Okay. What did I do wrong here? Outputs, first outputs, GPT Turbo instruct. Body choices. All right, I want this. So let's hover over here. But as soon as I'm not getting the expression that I need. So expression. First, dynamic, choices, question mark. Yeah, that's what I did wrong. So just like what we did in PowerFX, same thing here. I need to do the first function, and then after I get this table down to just one row or record, now I just need to bring back the column that I want. So this is the appropriate syntax. This should fix it up and help us work. Nothing like testing in the wild. Anyway, so there we go. Why couldn't the bicycle stand itself up? Because it was too tired. Okay, so we saw that does work there. Anyway, so as you're seeing, we are able to use multiple versions of what we've got going on. If we do go back out to flows again, let's do another new flow. I'm not actually going to go through the whole rigmarole of doing a full flow again, but just wanted to show you that in this use case, we could also add additional steps. And because I'm going through this Power Apps interface, it would be much better to go through the make.powerautomate.com environment so we can get to the new interface or the new designer But because you're not there, unfortunately, if you go through it this way, you're going to get stuck with the legacy, which still is functional, still works, but in some use cases, it's not good, especially if you're using AI Builder. All right, so that being said, here is the chat completion, and now the body is here. Now, this is quite simply much easier to do because, in theory, all I have to do now is copy this out verbatim, just like this. And I can save this. Well, I said I wasn't going to do it, but I guess I'll do it anyway, because it should just work. But probably not, because I am going to have to do the whole first thing again. First. Dynamic content. Expression first. What was this again? I need to do first, choices, message, and content. I'll copy this one out. First, document, choices, message, one more for content I need. And that should be all lowercase, not XC. Okay, test, manual, save. I just left the body however it was inside of there. Things should just light up and work for us. All right, so we did get it to work. And just says hello, how can I assist you today? So a lot easier to deal with this in Flow. So if you didn't want to deal with all of the craziness that you saw that I had going on inside of my Power App, and that's too difficult for you, a good choice might be to then maybe use it in Power Automate and then make sure that you're using the appropriate triggers in this use case. So for here, I would just want to delete this trigger, and I would go in and use something like Power Apps, the V2. I would accept the text parameter, right? So I don't know, something like V input or something, so that you can bring some information in, and then inside of here, I could use V input to just say, hey, listen, this is what I want. I don't need that explanation. But remember, in proper JSON, you need to have those quotes. So now this is how you would make it dynamic. And then instead of a compose down here, you would simply just a new step, and I think it's response, RESPON, Power Apps, respond to a Power App. And at this point, we want to provide some text back. We'll do V response. And then the dynamics text value is essentially, could be the output from the compose, since we already did the formula, or you could copy the formula out and paste that formula in here. Either way, and then this would be returned to your Power App. So that's another way of considering using Power Automate to return that value back into your Power App. So hopefully this gives you lots of creative ideas. Hope you found this video helpful. If you did, like, subscribe. Trying to grow the channel. Appreciate all the help I can get. That's it for this video, guys. We'll talk to you in the next one. Bye-bye.